we all suffer from any form of oppression. I think in the West there is a different way of expressing the ideas of sexual equality, which may or may not be necessarily mature yet. Even in the West, we're trying to understand this problem. It's going to take us a long time. I don't think we should evaluate what gender equality means according to anybody's definition of it right now. But I do think that we should all be thinking about it, and we should all question ourselves about it and realize we cannot be complacent and look for escapes in cultural exceptionalism, exclusivity. Nobody is treating women right in the world. Nobody. So how we express that inequality or discrimination is very different all over the planet. And at the same time, it's all wrong.
Welcome to Voice of Empowerment, Baha'i women authors inspiring change, equality and justice. In this documentary, we explore the lives and works of 9 remarkable Baha'i women authors who have made significant contributions to literature and society. Their writings inspire change, advocate for equality and promote justice, particularly for women around the world. We begin with Ruhiye Khanum, born Mary Sutherland Maxwell. As the wife of Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, she played a pivotal role in the development of the Baha'i community. Her book, Prescription for Living, offers practical advice on living a balanced and purposeful life, emphasizing the importance of women's roles in society.
You know, if you think about it, we're never going to be able to overcome our differences by our peers telling us what to do. In other words, India is not going to be told what to do by China. China is not going to be told what it should do by Russia. The United States is not going to be told what it should do by Russia. England is not going to accept to be told what it should do by Italy, and so on, because we are peers. We are equal as human beings. We have each of us our own culture, our own nation, our own background.
Next, we have Bahi'i Nakhjavani, an Iranian writer known for her novels that explore themes of social justice and women's rights. Her novel, The Woman Who Read Too Much, is inspired by the life of Tahiri Quratul Ain, a poet and scholar who challenged societal norms in 19th century Persia.
A woman's jewels always tell a story. If she buys herself rings, she must either use her dowry to do so, or find the money elsewhere, and her husband would soon learn of the source. If she receives them as a gift, she would have to explain the reason for such generosity, and he would soon discover the giver. And if she earns them by her own means, which was the worst of all, she would have to justify the methods she had used to do so. The daughter of the poetess knew all the stories of her mother's rings. She knew the story of the black slave who had sacrificed her life to acquire such a cornelian and had to sell it the very same day to buy herself a shroud. She knew the story of a jeweler who had thrown a whole saddlebag filled with turquoises as blue as this into a wayside ditch in order to merit entrance into paradise. And she knew the story of the thief, too, who cut off the finger of a dead woman to steal the ruby on it, only to lose his own hand for larceny.
Janita Khan is an Australian author and scholar who has published extensively on the history and teachings of the Bahá'í faith. Her biography, Prophet's Daughter, The Life and Legacy of Bahia Khanum, highlights the significant role of Bahia Khanum, a key female figure in the Bahá'í faith, and her contributions to women's rights.
Yet she overcame the suffocating effects of the environment in which she grew up. It was a background full of limitations. It was a culture where that was notorious for its blind fanaticism, its narrow outlook, and its uncompromising refusal to accommodate to the forces of modernity. So it was a very conservative, backward culture. And yet she was able to rise above this. This is really interesting. It's hard to rise above one's culture. Her life was one of imprisonment and captivity. And this lasted for 56 years of her life. It started when she was about 6 and ended when she was 62. And yet, she demonstrated the qualities of a liberated person. She wasn't a victim. But she, despite these challenges, despite the imprisonment, the house arrest and whatever, she was a liberated person. She was a modern person. She's also, I think, very interesting because she played a unique role as the designated head of an independent world religion, the Bahá'í faith. And she did this, it was a brief period of time, but it was at a critical point in the history of the faith. Beyond all of that, her father Baha'u'llah elevated her to a station and a rank that was quite unique. Let me just read to you how Baha'u'llah refers to her. This is a tablet in which he addresses his daughter, and he says, "We have elevated thee to the rank of one of the most distinguished among thy sex, and granted thee in my court a station such as none other woman hath surpassed." So she was unique. She was outstanding. She was the outstanding woman of the Baha'i dispensation, attested to by none other than Baha'u'llah.
In addition to her biographical work, Dr. Khan co-authored Advancement of Women, A Baha'i Perspective with Peter Khan. This comprehensive volume addresses the Baha'i teachings on gender equality and explores the various aspects of women's rights and their implementation in society. Dr. Khan's research and writings have significantly contributed to the understanding of gender issues and the role of women in religion, advocating for social change and the advancement of women's rights. Gwendolyn Etta Lewis is a Baha'i scholar and author who has written extensively on the experiences of African American women in the Baha'i faith. Her work often explores themes of race, gender, and social justice. In Lights of the Spirit, Historical Portraits of Black Baha'is in North America, 1898 to 2000s, co-authored with Richard Thomas. She provides historical portraits of Black Baha'is, highlighting their contributions and experiences within the Baha'i community, including the roles of African American women.
Typically speaking, when you look at the coverage of any historical event, usually Black women are not present, even though they were present. Their contributions are overlooked. And one of my best examples is Hidden Figures, where we had these women who were geniuses working at NASA. And yet we, as a public, never knew their names, never knew their contributions until the book came out and then the movie. So part of the purpose is to give honor, recognition to Black women who have been on the forefront of almost every movement that we see in this current society. I also wanted to bring up the whole position of positionality here because of Black women's unique experiences, again, within this society. If you look at the hierarchy in this current community, the society that we're living in, we find that Black women are always at a disadvantage. If we're on the bottom rung of the ladder, we pay more for our cars and our homes than anyone else. We get blamed more for anything else, any trouble that goes on, and we are the last to be celebrated. So this is a way to bring consciousness and awareness of the situation of Black women and to honor them in a respectful way.
Her chapter, The Most Challenging Issue Revisited, African American Bahá'í Women and the Advancement of Race and Gender Equality, 1899 to 1943. In the book, The Bahá'í Faith and African American History, Creating Racial and Religious Diversity, delves into the significant contributions of African American Bahá'í women to race and gender equality. Mahvash Sabet, an Iranian poet, has faced immense challenges due to her faith. Her collection, Prison Poems, written during her imprisonment, reflects her experiences and resilience. Her poetry provides a poignant look at the struggles and strength of women facing oppression.
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I truly appreciate your consideration for this precious award. I really appreciate your kind support, which has been a strong and powerful source to make me tolerate that harsh time. As you know, poem has opened a very significant opportunity to me to express myself and share my experiences with the world.
Loneliness. Poem by Mahvash Sabet. I said, give me the definition of loneliness. You said, when no one there besides you. I said, what if you are even lonelier than that? You said, then when there is no one to love you. I said, define the greatest, loneliest of all. You said, when no one understands you.
Layli Maparian is a Bahá'í scholar known for her work on womanism and social justice. Her book, The Womanist Idea, explores the concept of womanism, emphasizing the importance of women's rights and social justice.
You know, there's a lot of ways I can talk about how women participate in religion and spirituality, but the one that I'm really most interested in is how women integrate religion and spirituality into their everyday practices, whether it's family life, whether it's the way that they nurture their communities, whatever those communities may be, whether it's the ways in which they take care of themselves to give them strength to keep doing their work, whatever it is. You know, I think that what women often do is that they don't separate spirituality from everyday life or from the rest of their being. And because of that, there's a certain power that they carry throughout their day in all of their work. In particular, I'm interested in how sort of the so-called everyday women of the world do that. There are so many struggles that women face. Something has to help women get through those struggles. And I think that it's often spirituality that does that. So in my own work, I've really focused on how do women use spirituality and sometimes religion to make the world a better place. It's not that all women do it the same way, but I think there is something distinctive about the perspectives that women bring. And often it's quiet, often it's unannounced, but I think that many women actually do just infuse spirituality into everyday life in practical and quiet ways. I think that because women have historically been the caretakers, women have more of a tendency to be accepting of people in general. And when that tendency gets carried over into religious or spiritual context, we see the same tendency. It's not that women are without prejudice, but I think that whether it's because women have been socialized this way or because women are naturally this way, I won't answer that debate, but either way, I think that women have a tendency to bring the desire to make community work into any setting, and that men, for whatever reason, whether it's because of how they're socialized or whether it's because of they're naturally that way, they bring a different kind of spirit. And so I think that there needs to be balance between women's and men's contributions. And in interreligious dialogue, it's unfortunate that there aren't always equal numbers of participants between women and men, but I think women bring something very valuable and needed to interfaith dialogue.
Leila Rasek-Milani is an attorney and human rights advocate specializing in women's rights. Her handbook, CEDAW, Rights That Benefit the Entire Community, outlines the importance of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, and its impact on women's rights globally.
Violence against women can take many forms. It can look like domestic violence. It can look like an honor killing. It can look like early or child marriage, and it can look like human trafficking. In the over 2 decades of work I've done in the space of policy and advocacy, I've come to one very clear, precise understanding that many of the problems we face today, whether it's degradation of our environment, whether it's access to health care or access to quality education, or ending violence, every one of these problems arises when any one group thinks of its own well-being in isolation from that of its neighbors. With the 65 million displaced persons in the world today, and a lot of poverty and conflict in the world, environmental hazards, natural disasters, inequality of sexes, there is no surprise that there is a breeding ground of human beings that are there to be exploited. You see, the fact that we have so many vulnerable individuals in the world contributes and feeds into this industry who preys on the needs of the vulnerable. It makes sense, right? So when the carpet maker or the manufacturer wants to identify an 8-year-old girl, it's not that hard for him to do so. Because this family in India who doesn't value the education of the girl child is more willing to give away their girl so that she can at least make some money for them. Why do they need the money? Because they're in debt. When the migrant worker is easily tricked into traveling to Qatar to work in deplorable conditions, he does so because he is desperate. He does so because he is destitute. He does so because the human trafficker takes advantage of his vulnerability. So now, all the bad news put away, let me give you some good news. I don't want you to go away thinking, oh, I'm a horrible person because I bought that rug. I want you to go away thinking, what can I do to change the tide? What is our role in changing the tide here? And my friends, the good news is we can change it and we can end human trafficking. This is how. We all know, and people of many faiths know, and agree with this, that man's merit lies in service and virtue, not in the pageantry of wealth and riches. This is a paradigm shift that must take place for all of us to change our focus on what we value and what we spend our time doing.
June Manning Thomas is a Bahá'í author and urban planning scholar who has written about the intersection of race, urban development, and the Bahá'í faith. Her book, Redevelopment and Race: Planning a Finer City in Post-War Detroit, examines the impact of urban redevelopment on African American communities, including the roles and rights of women in these processes.
So the real problem was not just these public accommodation, public education, and voting rights, but there was a fundamental system of economic and political oppression that I talk about in the book, and the problem of social separation. There was so much separation that there was no feeling of empathy or love or warmth or acceptance when the litigation went through. And that is because the real basis was racial prejudice institutionalized. So that was the bedrock, I think, of the incompleteness of the civil rights movement as pursued. So what is the solution to these issues? This is the last portion. A personal solution. So in the book, I describe my own personal solution, which was to embrace the Baha'i faith. It was so obvious when I was going through this experience that there was only one community I could see that actually was living this ideal of true love between the races. So I described my gradual coming to awareness of this Baha'i community, and the epilogue describes fully my embrace of the Baha'i faith. But we also need a societal solution for this problem, this series of problems. This racial prejudice, this is the bedrock that needs to be eradicated. And instead of a system of economic and political oppression and social separation that we try to fix with access to public accommodations or public education or voting rights, what we need is a stronger system of economic and political social reform and social equality. And from that basis, the basis of racial prejudice eliminated, and then social reform, and then social equality, then we can really begin to see and conceptualize social reform. For example, the top row, social and economic development, complete education for all, not just desegregation, but complete, and that means physical plus spiritual education that does not leave others out, as well as enlightened governance. And that's just not begrudgingly giving voting rights, but giving full access to decision-making.
In Planning Progress, Lessons from Shoghi Effendi, she explores the guidance of Shoghi Effendi on social and urban planning with insights into the roles of women in community development. Her work highlights the importance of inclusive planning and the contributions of women to urban development and social justice. Finally, we have Bahá'í Rouhani Ma'ani, an author known for her works on the lives of women in the Baha'i faith. Her book, Leaves of the Twin Divine Trees, explores the lives and contributions of prominent women in the Baha'i faith, highlighting their roles and rights.
Leaves of the Twin Divine Trees, a book published by George Ronald in early 2009. World order can be founded only on an unshakable consciousness of the oneness of mankind, a spiritual truth which all human sciences confirm. Recognition of this truth requires abandonment of prejudice of every kind: race, class, color, creed, nation, sex. degree of material civilization, everything which enables people to consider themselves superior to others. The promise of world peace, quoted in Women, number 35.
We will never solve the problem of sexual discrimination if we think in terms of victimization and blame. We are an evolving society. We evolve at different levels in different parts of the world. Even in our individual lives, we have different rates of change and development, different times when we become mature or not. It's not a question of blame as if there was some absolute. We're learning how to live together. We're learning, because of the conditions of the world around us, that we need to change attitudes towards each other. There was a time when the patterns of sexual domination by men over women may have served some purpose. It no longer does. And so we have to change it. In the same way that there was a time when you could throw garbage away and it would fade away and disappear, now it no longer does. We have to be concerned with the environment. There was a time when we could, with impunity, have wars and we'd get over it. We no longer can, because wars could completely destroy the human race. So there are certain things that we've done in the past which may have, well, I won't say right or wrong, but happened, and we got over them and we carried on because the society was at a certain stage of development. It was either based on a family or based on a clan or based on a tribe or even based in terms of national identity. But we're living in an age today where we're so interrelated, where society is so bound up with everybody's actions that we can't have an action without profound consequences going generations and across the planet. So we have to readjust our values. And this is just about growing up.
These Bahá'í women authors have made significant contributions to literature and society, advocating for change, equality, and justice. Their voices continue to inspire and empower individuals around the world. Thank you for joining us in celebrating their remarkable achievements.